Well, oh, there it is. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Well, hold on. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Okay, yeah. Well, we got the thing. Hi there, ho there. Well, this is better than it was, yes. Someone said, "Oh, why don't you put it on top of your computer so at least it will work?" Yeah, okay, this way. Voila, there it is. Hi there, the new camera. I haven't used it before. I was always having trouble with it. People say, "Why don't you use your new camera? You have had it for over a year." And every time I tried to use it, the stand kept on wobbling, and I could never get the eyes right. Now I've discovered if I put it up here, someone just says, "Why don't you put it up there?" And I said, "Oh, I saw the back of the mind, and little nagging voice in the back of the mind said, 'Why don't you put it up there?'" Okay. Well, it's a better camera. Yes, that's work. Um, well, hi there. I'm. We're back. Live stream. I didn't think I'd. Today's. It's. Came back from class. Um, I was teaching this morning. We had the Federalist, my MA students. We had two. It was bad enough. We had 13 students registered, and when we went there were like uh, um, seven students that day out of 13. So it was like, ooh, more than eight. No. So today there was five, not eight. So I'm going to be, getting those. What's going on? Why did they drop? Why? Maybe they just wanted to come, and maybe they finally said, "I don't want to do a political science." Who knows? Because half the damn students there want to do, comic books or race and culture, Hollywood. So, of course, on the Federalists, it's on the Federalists. So it's little this. I thought it was going to be interesting, and then half of them are kind of missing. So five were missing originally. Now, of those five that were missing, two disappeared from the lists. They made up this resigned. And then two more were absent today. So again, we have five who are missing. So it's about 13 students, so 10 and 2, I think 13 is the number, includes my name. So it's 10. I mean, it's 12, and therefore it's a move. So 5 and 5. So we'll see what happens there. Busy boy. I've been writing so much. I printed out some things to work on. I have to print. I have to put some footnotes on my Alain de Bossuet piece, which I'm going to probably send to European history of European ideas. I think I just have to add some footnotes to that. I sent something to a Polish journal, Chronos, about Oakshott. Now, I regret doing it because I got a feeling they're going to reject it because it's not. I looked at it and said it needs footnotes. It needs a little bit of footnotes. I wrote it really not for footnotes. I wrote it to kind of talk about things in generally. And but then someone said, "Why don't you send it? It's good, very good piece. Send it." And I said, "Okay, I'll send it to this place." I thought it was the magazine. Then I realized, no, they're more academic journal. They're not really a magazine. They would. So I got a feeling they might like it, but they might want. So I will start the process of doing some footnotes for it. I got some. I got the reference. I know where the reference I used. I mean, it's not that I used them. I remember reading all this. I read so much Oakeshott in my life, and I heard all the Straussian criticisms from people, all the Straussians who I grew up with and studied with and went to school, was studied under, who really just disliked Oakeshott. And I heard all of the famous criticisms. So I grew up with them. So it's not that it's I read them in an article someplace. It's no, I grew up with them. So therefore, this is all within my memory of my experience of Oakeshott, my own reading of Oakeshott, my synthesis of what his thinkings were, and understanding what Oakeshott had to say, my own interpretation of Oakeshott's how you understand Oakeshott in his discussion, his conception of experience and things like this, and how this was more akin to the classical understanding of rationality than and prudence per se for the political thing. Than so that piece I have to. I think I will. I think they're going to reject it. I think they're going to say, "Well, thank you, but no, thank you," or they might say, "We like it, but we would need you to give me some referencing." See, that's the big worry about that. I think they might say no, simply just unaffected, there's no reference. I think I just only have one reference note to this, the Oakeshott books. And perhaps I should have had a little more to some of the critics. Not that I used any of the critics or citing any of the critics. It was just that it was basically my memory of what was said to me over, back 30 years ago. And it was in my notes what people said to me, my comments and notes about Oakeshott. The European conservative editor is still looking at my De La Mora book review of his egalitarian envy. I sent someone's going to ask me, I have to say correlates. Correlates. In the previous thing, I flagged him, and then I even made available my review through Google Scholar, because I did, I said here's my review of Michel Gauchet's 4 volumes. I wrote Corliss told me about it. I remember I read Gauchet for years. I just didn't realize he did this new final series. I ordered it, I got it, and I read it. It's in French. It's not available in English, unfortunately. And I wrote a review of the 4 volumes. And I also wrote a review of Philippe Benetton's Machiavelli book. And I sent it to political perspectives on political science. We had a problem. They didn't like. It was a little too long, and then he didn't like it because it was not specific enough. And I looked at it. I wasn't even happy with it because when I wrote it originally, it was more theoretically of looking conceptually, just understanding. I wrote it as an understanding of Benetton's thinking of Machiavelli, and so it was therefore more focused on the nature of Machiavelli's discoveries. Not that and a reader could get a view that I was saying that Benetton was completely agreeing with Machiavelli, everything here. And in fact, the editor said, "Oh, you just, well, I know," because he knew Baton and said, "Are you asserting that Baton is fully in agreement with this?" And I go, "Well, no, not really." And they got nitty because the editor and I, he's a friend of a friend, uh, and he kind of made some annoying comments because of our personal relationship, and his knowledge of my dyslexia. Hi, Mr. Greenglass. Good morning in California. So I said to him, "Listen, I wrote a new. In fact, that evening, I gave him the review, the corrected review. I got it to 5 pages, but I wasn't happy. I just wanted to get it done. I took 4 hours. 3 hours making it to the 5 pages he wanted, 5 single-space pages he wanted, and I was kind of not that happy myself with it. Had doubts, but he was kind of being kind of lazy in the sense that he'd said, "I'd give you suggestions." Now he kind of rewrote elements of he kind of edited something, but to be honest, his editing was less than useful because the editing kind of like added awkward phrases like the Florentine thing. It's like, really? Why, the Florentine? Why would I refer to Macchia as the Florentine? Um, it was like fancy. His. So I was. At one stage, I said, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it his way." But then I slept that night next morning I wake up a little cranky because of not being happy with it. So I re-looked at Benetton's book again because I have it on PDF. I kind of looked at it again. Actually, I have it on yeah, I have it as EPUB. I was looking at on my EPUB, and I was like reading it, and I was saying yes or no, yes and no. It's in French. I looked at my notes. I reviewed my notes, and I said, "Okay, let's do this from scratch." I forced myself to make an outline of the book, taking my notes, and then reordered the notes to fit the outline. And the second thing I did is I limited myself. I was strict on I used an editor to force myself to do every section, do no more than 2 paragraphs, no more than 2 paragraphs. So I wanted to get it at 4 pages, the single space pages. So I really, really rewrote it. Now, but I said, no. So I wrote to him saying, "I haven't heard from you. If you received my thing that I said, and I don't know. I never know when people are being, when silence is good or when silence is bad. Usually silence is bad." I said, "Listen, listen." I told him what happened. I said I kind of felt, I woke up, it was bothering me. Something was nagging at me. Next day, I kind of just looked at something and we did it, and it led to me to writing a quick rewrite of this, a rewrite of it from scratch, focusing on the structure of the book more than how I did it. I was doing it the way I did it. Wasn't really the structure of the book, but it was more kind of structuring the themes that I discovered in it, right? and my kind of analytic ordering of the themes. Oh God, that's my touch. Hope I'm not coming down with something catching my students. So I was like, oh God, what did I do wrong? So I said to him, "Listen, I'm not happy with it, and I understand that you kind of gripe with it also." I said, "Listen, if you're happy with what you have here, I'll accept it. If you want to go with what you have, I'll accept it. I'll accept it. Um, but then I worked all night, all day today, because this is Sunday. I said I worked all night and all day today. 8 hours, 9 hours. I have a 4-page version. Would you like it? I mean, if you're happy with it, I'll wash my hands. But if you want, I can give you this. And he said, well, you basically the tone of it was he was not happy with what he got. And he got snotty back. But you shouldn't promise something you're not going to deliver. Like, it would have been honest if they didn't like what you did. So I wrote. I said, listen, I haven't heard from you. Did you? Was the new thing acceptable to you? Because I don't care if you don't want it, you don't want it. You can say fuck it, and I'll give up on it. He said it had to be 95% done. I'm like, well, it's 93% done. There's no writing there in question. It's more the problem was that you didn't like the fact that I was kind of more verbose, and I didn't highlight the fact where the areas where Baton disagreed with Machiavelli. I didn't highlight that at all in the original thing because I was more paying attention to the discoveries that Baton made about Machiavelli, and because the book is great for that, right? His what is it? Machiavelli. How can I say that? Mr. Greengrass wants to know, is Poland okay for fast track? In other words, is Poland open to U.S. citizens fast tracking or moving to stay Warsaw? Listen, if you're in Poland, Warsaw, the immigration was very clear. You can stay for 90 days. You can begin the immigration process. Of requesting I think it's the rule is a 2-year a 2-year visa, a 2-year or long-term visa. And it's rather straightforward. You just have to show you have a source of income, you have insurance, a source of income, and that they have no problems. So if you have a means of funding yourself and having a steady an income base that you can prove like you have this money coming to you, then they don't. It's not a problem. It's not a thing like this. It's all European standard. It's not national. It's the EU regulations of immigration. Everything's normalized in this sense. You can become a long-term resident. Okay. You just have to find an apartment. And by the way, apartments are not cheap because of the nature of the inflation. So the cost of living regarding apartments, you go to Warsaw. Warsaw's a very expensive city. So if you come to a place like Warsaw or something, it'd be good. It'd be first good to come and scope the place out for 2 months or 3 months. Go make an arrangement. Go back to the U.S. Make your arrangements to do something of how you're going to finance your situation. If you're online, if you have a business or something online and that you can do it like this, that's fine in that sense. I don't care. Then you come back and do it. You need to come. You need to find a place to live, a place to negotiate it. Then you have to leave the Schengen. I think you get to come twice, 90 days, and then you have to wait 6 months. So what you do is you come for 30 days, you set up your situation, go back, come back, then start your visa process. Start your short-term stay requirement with your you have a place to live, you have a residence requirement. You have some kind of a business, so that how that works in that sense. Okay, so that's, hey, I didn't mean to do this, you guys. Sorry if I interrupted the things, but I felt like responding to him. Yes, I'm in Warsaw in that sense. Um, so that was the review at that place. I don't even know whether that review was going to be accepted or not of Philip Benetton's book on Machiavelli. So I'm finishing my political form book. My book, my political, I say on the political form. I got the back from my friend who kind of didn't really help as much as I thought he was going to help in terms of, I just have to sit down and look at it. So I have three things to add notes to: the Benetton piece, the form piece, and now the Oakshott piece. If I get these done, I'll have 4 articles out there. I have an article on political science, American political science impacting in Central Europe, that it needs someone to go through there and add references to the contemporary Polish scholarship. My Polish is not good enough to kind of geared, to read everything and know what's going on. And if the person could simply just agree to doing that, adding that, I said I'd make him a co-author. I have a piece at Minnetonka when he comes there. I can never say it. The Minnetonka. I can't. Gonna drive me crazy of how to pronounce the word. The journal, the online journal. They're redoing the journal a little bit, and therefore they're going to hold off the new issues. That's where I printed my last Lefort piece. This is the second Lefort piece on it, on Lefort's general understanding of these themes. Then what else? What else I have to do? I have to do I have my 3 Machiavelli things, Aristotle things to do, and that's it. I have to go. I have something on Aristotle and power that I should do for the Journal of Political Power, which I should do. But I've got my. I hope they'll accept my conference paper for the Midwest. That will be the question of preserving regimes, the question of regime preservation, and how it's done, and why it's important in that sense. Then I will start the discussion on what I call Aristotle's Prince, the change and preservation of monarchy, and that's kingship and tyranny. And that will help me finish my big. It'll be one of the wrapping up thing. I just have to have the discussion on change of. I'm making real progress in writing in that sense. I did an ebook. We have an ebook done. I made some discoveries. A friend of mine indicated to me of an add-on to Windows. I only added it onto my university email, Windows, Word, and it allows you to generate a EPUB via Word. And I made some discoveries. One is the big discovery is I cannot do outlines. It won't work. So my project of making my big outline thing, I have done my new Aristotle outline. It is done. It is if I make a new version of my Aristotle outline, my outline of Aristotle, my analysis, the outline of the politics, every chapter by chapter. It's in using the format, the mass market paperback format that I used for the notebooks, my Aristotle's notebook thing. Same size, same format. I removed the bibliography. Okay, the bibliography itself was it? And this whole thing, it was this thing, and everyone doesn't really buy it. Why don't people buy 280 pages? And the bibliography starts on 249. So it's about over 30 something pages. Okay, the bibliography for this. If I go look at the reference of the outline to this one, it's completely different. It's more detailed, 100 times more detailed. That's why it's over 800 pages. There's no way I'm going to put that into this. It's going to be 3 times the size of this, so therefore 3 times the price. And it was not going to be the original purpose of it was to be an EPUB, to be made into an EPUB easily. So I have to think about what the hell to do with it. Part of me, it's done. I just have to figure out what to do with it. Now, one part of me said, why don't you make an okay. I could make a website, and the website idea is attractive to me. I have to go remember what my password was for Tripod. Because I have a Aristotle page on Tripod that I could just convert everything I have here into a simple, take all these things, make each chapter its own page, and then allow for the interliking, highlighting, just interactivity of it. I think that would be the best mode of what to do there. I think I might go do that. I might go, oh God. Hope I'm not coming down something. Now I'm worried. Yuck. It's lousy weather. It's warm and hot. It got warm, it was cold and wet, and then cold, chilly, and then a little warm. And this is the kind of flu weather, right? So that's my writing thing. Now, you guys, okay, ready? I've promised you, and I said this at Machiavelli's Discourses. I've gotten all the prep work ready. To start productions. But it's not going to be. They're not going to be start live until after the end of the rerun of Aristotle's Politics. And I'm not sure how many people. I'm not sure if people are going to be happy with the rerun of Aristotle's Politics. I think I haven't seen any real big increase. I think many of you have seen it already, and new people who haven't seen it not necessarily coming to it. So I did that because I needed some time to do things and prepare, and I just didn't have any free energy, and I didn't know how to handle it. And I wanted to get some writing done. One of the things I'm doing is doing an outline for the Federalist Papers with my students. Okay, so I'm so far up to the 40s. So I think by a couple weeks, I'll get to the end of it. And whatever I decide with the politics, I will do the same with the Federalist Papers. I think I'll make a web page, as that will be a much better thing. Now, how would I do the web page? Some people say, why don't you do a Substack? Why? I don't want to do a Substack, really. I want more of kind of a blog or a website that somebody can always go to and always kind of get access to this. We'll see. I'm kind of. Let me do the I'm just thinking about this. So I have to really think some more about this. My friend Steve Haywood invited me to kind of participate in a Substack thing. I'm not sure to how much. He gave me access to it, but I don't feel comfortable about this. I need to talk to him about this, and he's been busy. So I'm going to do the video back to you guys for videos. I'm going to be doing the videos of starting and I think recording in January. I'll start recording probably in November, and so I have a whole series of recordings ready. and I'm going to be looking at the the discourses using the Mansfield and Tarkar edition. People say, why don't you use the D'Alvarez, because it's not public and it's I only have it's not for consumption, and he hasn't released it, so I don't feel like he's teaching from it. I mean, doing it online, that would be kind of a betrayal of his rights. Even though I made myself a copy of it, so I have a nice book copy of it, so it doesn't fall, because I got electronic copies, now fun to read. I have a nice book copy of it now, and it's going to stay this way in that sense. It's something to read. I had it bound, so the things you can do. And he says, have I read De Soto's? Yes, Hernando De Soto's Mystery Capital is outstanding. It is one of the very good book. Are you going to teach the upcoming election? Well, are you going to touch on the upcoming election? Well, the U.S. election is I don't think it's going to be that interesting. I mean, why do I want to talk about the U.S. election? And that's because it's be one more voice on that. There's already a lot of people who are doing good stuff on the elections. And my own thought is that Trump's probably going to win, giving what I see about, unless there's some extraordinary corruption. I don't think there can be. And I think Camilla, the hurricanes undid hurricanes. And Camilla's deaf tone is more like she instead of doing in other words, they're not going to get the Obama benefit. Okay, Obama benefited from the hurricane hit the East Coast and Republican states when Chris Christie had to basically bend the knee and do this. The shenanigans, I hate to say it, the shenanigans that would happen in 2020 were only possible because of a lot of people were afraid. A lot of people were also disappointed. A lot of people didn't want to go out. The turnout, although it was high, it was sufficiently tight, and because of the way people voted and the way voting was done, they had the ability to kind of think. But now people are more aware and they're more active, more proactive in challenging this stuff and getting it done before. See, the problem about the legal challenges was it's too late. The legal challenges, they didn't do the challenges right. They tried to have the election undone, and no judge is going to basically. In other words, the idea is for a judge to make a ruling that his decision must have an equitable effect. In other words, it must not harm other people, and that therefore, in other words, there'd be parties not participant in the illegal activity who would be harmed by the ruling decision. So no judge was going to ever undo the election in that sense. In fact, they couldn't even, when the Carling case in Georgia happened, the judge was kind of very suspicious of Dominion machines, but the problem was there was no recourse because there was no alternative recourse that was not going to interfere with the election. Okay, so I think there was a misunderstanding of what the shenanigans were. The shenanigans were the typical Democratic machines cheating that has always happened in American politics. And they can cheat by 10%. That's the rule. Therefore, you have to have a plus 15. You have to do if you're doing 15-20%. Well, you win because they can't. They're going to be cheating at the level they're cheating. Okay, the Democrats always cheat. The Democratic urban machines always cheat. They have always done this. Cook County has always cooked the electoral books. On California, the same thing. In certain counties in California, the Democrats control it. They're going to cook the books. The thing about this is if the numbers are high enough and the voter turnout is high enough, I think, and in fact, even early voting, people should be doing early voting. Not just waiting for the day, but going out there for the day is one thing, but early voting is very important because I think that's going to be if we have a high level of early voting and then the two hot peaks will make cheating impossible. It'll make it difficult. It can still happen, but the shenanigans that are compared to 2020, no, it's not going to. You don't have the same. And actually, the problem here is that Biden was an unknown. Biden was a nice, happy grandpa. Okay, Biden is a happy old grandpa, and people who were kind of tired of the brazen Trump were tired of Trump. They liked his policies, but the policies aren't working with COVID, and that they're in COVID, they're hurting, and they wanted comfort. They wanted a comfortable person, so therefore that's how it is. And Trump, Musk was. I can't watch Tucker. I'm sorry, Tucker is just ridiculous lately. Even though I think Musk would be a very interesting candidate, that Tucker decided to put that idiot guy, Mater Maid, and interview someone like Mater Maid, who's basically a brown shirt. He's a brown shirt. I'm sorry. He has the Jew problem. A Jew under everything, please. I mean, I don't like liberal Jews. Liberal Jews and radical Jews, you can say they're like any radical liberal entity are blights on the world, but that they're blights because they're Jews, not because to claim that they're blights because they're Jews, not because they're radicals, is wrong. It's kind of, well, no, sorry, no, you have a problem. Mater Maid was a disaster for that point of view, and as Tucker is not as smart as he thinks he is. He was played by Putin in the Putin interview because he didn't have any knowledge to challenge Putin, and likewise he didn't have any knowledge to challenge Mater Maid. Now he's too into Russia because Russia is now in the anti-liberal. Okay, it's the need. I call it the knee-jerk reaction. I mean, liberalism is bad. This is anti-liberal, so therefore this must be good. Now, this is and also just because the idea that something is not liberal is always bad is not true. But not the opposite, that everything not liberal is good, is also not true. Okay, so therefore this is you have to understand and measure the phenomenon question. I mean, is Putin the same? Is Orban's Hungary the same as Putin's Russia? Hell no. Okay, but is Orban's Ukraine something that could work in America? No, because they're an ethnic. They are an ethnic nation. They have an ethnic identity, an ethnic structure. It wants to understand itself politically, but it's an ethnic construction. It's Hungarian. It has an identity that it's trying to preserve and maintain against threats mostly now from Romanian minorities and somewhat Lutheran minorities who using the EU institutions trying to undermine and challenge the majority population's identity. Okay, that's the kind of crux of these things. Could you have the kind of policies that Orban wants for the U.S.? That's a state by state issue. But that's always been going on. China and Russia. I mean, no. They've been getting together since the 1990s, and the late 2000s, as the alternative to the U.S. You look at their voting behavior in the UN starting in 2000. The Russians have always been kind of bad actors on this, and they've been working with the Chinese. Yes, it's been this way, but the Ukraine war is. Listen, Russia is going towards Ukraine. Now, Russia is going to China only because Russia is fucked up. It has been fucked up, and until it fixes itself, and the only way it's going to fix itself is becoming a normal nation, and it can't do that. It's not going to be able to do that. And the idea that we're going to put up with a destabilized big superpower, a wannabe chip on its shoulder can't be, limp dick power like Russia, who collectively, yes, it has nukes, but do you really trust them? You think they may be more dangerous to them than to anyone else? No. And that they're getting together. The Chinese loves it. The Chinese love this because they want to gobble up the Siberia and get all those resources and land those lands in Siberia are prime agricultural land. Yes, it's under tundra. Some of it's under tundra right now, but underneath that tundra is some of the best agricultural land in human history. It's like the land in Ukraine in that sense. It is 5 times, 10 times more naturally productive than normal, land in the fertile land, healthy fertile land elsewhere. China needs to go up there for this food and its energy resource problem. Russia is too much of a sick man. Russia is just too much of a sick man in that sense. I don't see Russia being at all capable of being a strong player. It's too destabilized. It's. I think the question here is who's going to. China wants to go up there, but China itself is sick. It has a demographic problem. It has an aging. It's one child policy has actually created a crisis of population and demographics, and it creates a problem of not enough women, not enough children, not enough things to maintain itself in the long run. So China might be facing a cliff of its own resource power that it's going to be confronted with a much more dynamic and much more powerful India in the next 100 years. So China may be threatening, but it's on the verge of collapsing geopolitically in that sense, demographically. And that this is that kind of last gasp. No, it's China. Its quest to regain Taiwan is kind of symbolic more than because the Taiwanese aren't going to increase the Chinese population rate in any way. The Taiwanese have a similar diminishing elderizing population. Yes, they would love to take the ethnic Chinese of Southeast Asia and incorporate them back into the Chinese population. But the reason why those Chinese are there is to escape the dominant political culture and in other words, they're fleeing from the political, the central control, the oppressive aspects of China. Those who can flee have been fleeing. taking their capital and leaving, and they're not going to come back to this. So in many ways, China is kind of grasping at straws and trying to. It's a dying power like Russia. It's dying in a different way. Russia is far sicker. Russia is far sicker, and it's more destabilizing because of the way the kleptocratic regimes of the last 30 years have been allowed to establish and metastasize all through the whole Russian infrastructure. Now, Ukraine's no better. Yeah, Ukraine's no better, but Ukraine is actually has it has a vitalization it has a cultural vitalization that the Russians lack. It has the war with Russia has given them a vitality and a civic identity that before they lacked for hundreds of years. So let me be just kind of blunt on that. I'm not a Ukraine fanboy. I think Ukraine is I'm not going to be a Ukraine uberalist. They deserve everything they get. No. In fact, I think a lot of what they're getting is the wrong kind of things, and that their government and legitimate hero worship, the legitimate praise of Zelensky's behavior at the beginning of the crisis does not mean Zelensky should be praised for everything. Zelensky is now much more destabilizing in the sense that he is more concerned with his own popularity and his trying to keep control of things. He's often making deals with the Europeans and the Americans that are very counterproductive to the war effort, and even then, he doesn't do himself any favor by getting in bed with the Democratic administration and getting into he got involved. The Germans got him involved in a political fight with the Polish government, the last Polish government, that the Germans wanted to basically unelect. And therefore, they used their economic and their political influence in Ukraine to get him to do something that would cause political problems in Poland. And they did that. And by doing that, he hurt Ukrainian interests because there's a growing backlash in Poland against Ukrainians and against Ukrainian interest. Okay, now you have this problem. Well, wait a minute. We have to support Ukraine completely, otherwise we're going to lose our credibility as a European. No. The question is, what's in your interest? Is it in your interest or not in your interest? If it's in your interest, then yes, do it. If it's not in your interest, say no. And therefore, the idea that Ukraine maybe needs to pay back Poland and, address the wrongs of the past in a fundamental way before any entry of discussion of EU membership or even any kind of European access. We will help you stop Russia. We'll help you restore your borders. But no, you want European access and greater European access and all these other things. Well, no. You got to clean up, or get right with us, the Poles. Not us, me, but the Poles, and then maybe we will consider letting you into the Union in that sense. That's going to happen in that sense. It's not in anyone's interest that. It's no one's the European agrarians, the agricultural sector of Europe cannot tolerate Ukraine's entry in the EU. It will destroy all of the agrarian interests in Central Europe. It will just wipe it out. And the fact that the Ukrainian agriculture is not private It's mostly state owned, and it's now globally owned by Europe, basically German and French, and German, French, maybe even Danish interests. In other words, French and German uh, agri businesses heavily got in negotiated with the Zelensky government in that sense. Is what I'm hearing from people. So therefore, it's a much more complex problem in that sense. Now, Kurlitz said I needed to talk about something, and I promised him I would. And, he liked my review. He accessed my review. I'm going to have to take it down. My question for the next live stream has got to be: is Gouchet, is his work to become more influential? And I think no, unless it's translated in English greater. Some of his books are translated in English, but they're kind of like niche interest among political theorists. Because his understanding of the Christ legitimacy that is going on at the moment seems good. I agree with you. That's true. His fourth volume about this is actually very interesting, and actually deserves to be. I mean, the whole 4-volume set deserves to be translated in English and wider things, but it's not going to happen because there's no real interest in doing this. And it can place it in a historic context. Yes, that's true. That the current crisis is understood historically and tied to a specific context. And I think and this is why Gouchet's volumes are fantastic. They're very important, but they're not going to be translated. I don't see anyone having any desire to, because it's going to cost money and no one's going to pay for it. And there's no money to be made. It won't get backed. In other words, they'll translate crap. The extreme, the dissident right is not going to translate it because he's not seen as one of theirs. He's seen as someone like he's part of the Lefort, Raymond Aron kind of liberal Democrat. A critic sees the dangers, like Pierre Minot, not religious as Pierre Minot, but similar to this Pierre Minot, Raymond Aron, Lefort, direction in French political affairs. And that's right. Gouchet he remains optimistic about democracy. And offers insights about how this current crisis can be navigated. Yes, exactly. The fourth volume is very good for that thing, and as his other books on democracy. I have his book on Gouchet's book, the religions, religion, des la démocratie. So, I mean, come on. Gouchet is a very good book. His book on his 3-volume, it was a 4-volume set on the event of democracy, right? But he did a wonderful book on the history of, the disenchantment. So, I mean, this is... I would be interested to see some of the dissident right content creators like AA engaging Gouchet's work and what come out of. And the problem, I don't think AA. I'm not sure AA reads French. Ooh, we're gonna get in trouble. I think he's a Brit, and Brits don't like all things French. But wait a minute, he likes Gustave Le Bon, but that's because of his libertarian past got into it. I mean, he can't. I don't think he's reading. I don't think AA is reading, what's his name? He's Evola. Let me see. I want to be right. Julius Evola, Italian. I don't think he's reading Evola in the Italian. I think he's reading these extreme translations by, how can I say this? I don't want to get in trouble because I like what sometimes what they do. I have to be careful because it's a talking about Evola is kind of one of those, because like Spengler and Ernst Junger is very difficult because he's poetic and he's philosophic, existentialist and that things, and he writes plays, he writes drama, fiction, and therefore a lot of his work is more in terms of fiction and narrative accounts of personality. Junger is very interesting because Junger will have impact on the early Heidegger. Um, Spengler is Spengler is both wonderful and horrible. I think as this Rene Guéron, um, Evola is Italian in that sense. His writing is in Italian. The translations of his work in English are mm, some are better than others. The commercial ones, the one more commercial, the erotic stuff, the Eros stuff gets a better job. His real fascistic stuff tends to be done by Arcos and publishers like that. See, my problem with Arctos is okay. Carew publication is more extreme. I know that. This is they're almost brown shirts. This is the almost Carew publication. Um, um, it's traditionist reactionary publications in that sense. I'm they say reactionary like this, but I think it borders on real fascistic and brown shirt. Arcos was better. Arcos is a little more restrained. It has the traditionalist direction of that stuff. I've always had but you have to remember his other stuff was translated by more mainstream traditional publications in the 80s and 90s. Okay. But it's the race stuff and the national stuff will be Arcos, and the more specific racist things, and the ultra spiritualist things. The spiritualist stuff was translated by a lot of places. It's the pagan imperialism. It's different. So when I look at AA, I don't see him reading the Italian because if he read the Italian, he would have turned to more on Pareto than he does. He relies on very limited editions of the Mind and Society translations are disastrous. The current Mind and Society translation. That's why he relied on that. The Oxford, the ones that he mentions about the essays that were put in political economy, because it's accessible. It's much better accessible and understandable. But it's English. If he read the Italian, if he looked at the Italian, so you're asking him to read the French, a French thing that's not being translated? No. My God, AA doesn't even read Pierre Menat. Okay, AA went down the wrong rabbit hole. He was in he got bit by the darkness of Hans Hope, who has a cynicism against democracy, and he went from that to Evola, and darker down the hole. Okay, And then he followed the same path as Yarvin, and Yarvin is just silly on these things. I can't take Yarvin seriously. Yarvin on these issues it's Bronze Age pervert has more sanity, more political savvy than, and that's saying a lot because I think Bronze Age is more philosophic than a political thinker, than Curtis. Curtis may be a very smart fellow, but he just has no political judgment, and in his kind of elite, he has this love of this Carlyle fetish combined with a love of the great man. And this idea of elites that don't really understand the nature of elites. And I think ultimately even AA has a problem with elites. He doesn't understand that elites are circularizing. They're always changing. They're not this permanent, a fixed thing in this sense. So I don't know what to say. I just can't read Yeager. I'm sorry, I can't read his fiction. It might be wonderful, might be great. Life's too short. And Bronze Age pervert, I always joke. He needs a goddamn editor. His book on selective breeding, his dissertation was decent. It was a good dissertation. I think it was a very good dissertation. It needed an editor. It needed a good editor, and his attempt to modernize it kind of felt, he tried to, bring it in. No, it needed more work. I'm never going to get the Bronze Age Pervert Award because, I promised somebody I will talk about something, and that is, I'm going to go over time. We're at the hour now, and I really should stop, and I should go upstairs and go to sleep. I feel tired in that sense. It's been a long day. But let me talk about one thing, and that is, I was discussing something. Okay, I did something. I'm not gonna. I used an AI editor to make a video, and I made one. It's about quangos. It's there. I have it. I used a free editor. It was okay. It won't let me do it for another week or two before I can make a new video. I have the video. I shared it with friends. They liked it. I thought it was good. I might make a series of these videos. Now, the problem with AI video, it's all different. It's not going to be me. It's going to be an AI person. Well, not going to burp. He's going to be more cool. I think the character is John. John is the character in the thing. I'm thinking about calling Professor Y. Professor Y, the character can be John Y. John Y. Professor Y will be kind of like cool kid trying to describe these things. And I might have him do it. I might make a separate little web channel. Keep it discreet, keep it totally separate from here. Only do a video a week, maybe a video a month, something like this. Make it wholly kind of entertaining, kind of like on a topic, and just play around with it. It was fun to do that. But then when I was talking with this guy who's a British editor of a British magazine who lives in Poland, we're talking about the difference between America and Britain, because the video I made was about why quangos, this concept of quangos, or the independent organizations that are set up in the English politics, how they're not, it doesn't have the same ring in America. In America, it's much more complicated and it's more diverse than the British system, and in the way that even So I wrote a little thing about this. I used that as a script. The AI used it as a script, the manifold for a script for this video that I made. It works. I might make more. But this leads me into the point I think I was discussing about the difference between America and one of the best British political series is Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. It was done at the late 1970s, early 80s, the beginning of Thatcher, and that it's political satire, but it's accurate political satire. And I was thinking that it was a very, in fact, the idea of the problem of quangos first began even then. Now, the Thatcherites thought this as a way to get things out of the hands of bureaucrats to the hands of the private sector. So the conservatives are just as much as but then what happened was when the rise of Blair, what Blair did was he used liberal means to achieve radical ends. This is neoliberalism in that sense. And that what Blair did was he said, I'm not going to fight the quangos and these things. No, I'm going to take them over. We're going to have nice, dedicated left. This is the capture. This is the capture of the civic sphere. Because in many ways, that a lot of people on the libertarian right saw quangos and NGOs and these things as kind of the creation of civil society that Tocqueville talked about as these civil associations that are going to preserve and protect against democratic centralization, administrative democratic centralization, and prevent majority tyranny in that sense. This is the classic original neoliberal argument of the 70s. This is how civil society form organizations. But the problem here is this, that the way the quangos operate within the framework of a nation structure, that once the radicals take control of this, they use these institutions to achieve radical means. In other words, it becomes bureaucratic centralization with the civil society organizations working hand in hand to achieve a situation where the people's voice has no longer any control. That's the English situation in that sense. And I think this is something that David Starkey has been kind of hitting on and talking about. And I wanted to just kind of like explain why these things are different and how I also framed it within the context of administrative state and managerial systems. That these are actually different too in that sense. And I might do a video on the managerial economy in that sense and things like this, the managerial elite. Well, that's the crux of what I'm trying to do in that sense. But back to, I've talked about this many times, and it's one of the great British films of those things. That we have to understand that this transition to modern Britain, Blair Britain, and Blair Britain is completely different than Blair Cameron Britain. Blair Brown and Cameron Britain is completely different than Thatcher and Major Britain. Okay. And what came before. And what we need to do here is understand that is we have to understand this in the BBC series. I think it's 5-part series. I'm not sure. The thick of it. I can never say his name. It has an Italian sounding name. Has a very Italian sounding name. Oh God, I'm looking at it right now. It's yeah, Armando. I'm gonna just put the name in the damn. I can't spell it to save myself. Armando Anacucci, and he's famous director. What series that he did? He did like lots of series. You know, I Am Iron Partridge. Um, the Day Today, to be television series. Um, uh, After Champion Yes Minister on BBC Four's best sitcom, he then was the chief writer of Thick of It, right? It started as political satire come farce and before, right? And then he used it to deal with the whole ultimately lasted summer series, and then he dealt with the trying to make the movie. What was it? The movie that they turned into it was about this In the Loop. He made a first feature film was In the Loop, which is the size of Thick of It, but dealing with the Iraq War. And what the problem with and his second feature film was 2017 Wonderful Death of Stalin, which I think is much better than In the Loop. In the Loop was a failure, in my opinion. In the Loop was a dedicated failure. Why? Even though he got the English system right, he never understood the American system. Even though he got the HBO series The Veep has never been good. It has been always, you look at it and say, what the fuck? It doesn't understand it. You have to also remember the famous difference between, let's say, the game of cards, House of Cards. House of Cards, the original British three-part series, three series British thing about the British Prime Minister Urquhart, Francis Urquhart versus Frank Underwood, American. The difference is the same thing as the difference between the English model versus the American. You see the Office in the British series, which is much more. You couldn't do any, no American business would be able to do anything. You'd be destroyed by the lawsuits in America by anyone behaving the way that they behaved in the Office, the British Office. The American Office was completely different. It translated it to make the Office work. It actually was more successful in the U.S. by its proper transfer in that sense. What was in the thick of it? In the thick of it was basically taking the British sitcom The Office and applying it to Yes Minister, and to understand the spin room, the spin masters of the people behind Blair. The Michael, I forget the two guys, Miliband and I forget the names. And I'm getting tired. So, hold on, Ivana. I'm talking. My wife is saying, "Why is she coming here now?" Well, that's about time I should wrap up. The apparat, what do you call it? In the thick of it, it was a wonderful comedy in terms of what it was. It was making fun of Miliband and the other guy. I forget the other guy. The other man behind the Blair regime, and the whole characterization of the character, that this is shaped the way British government worked, and the changes that happened to the ministerial system under this period, the Blair, Brown, and Cameron order, and how the Blair disease affected the Tories. You can see that, and at the last two parts of the series, you see the how this was the disease was shaping this. This is political comedy, and this is also teaching us about the nature of political systems. Whereas when this director is looking at the American politics, he never understood American politics. Never. He doesn't understand that's why In the Loop was a disaster. It didn't understand the nature of the cabinet system and the cabinet and the professionals. It didn't understand the DOD, how the DOD, he thought the DOD was only military people. Where no, the DOD is more civilian. There's more civilians in DOD than the military people in terms of the administration, the administrative level. And that the State Department was, going to be the gung-ho people. No, the State Department was never the gung-ho people. It was the fight between. There was a dispute between some military people and the civilian DOD and the Bush team, but the State Department was much more a kind of a reactionary, not reactionary, but an anti-interventionist, but didn't want to transfer power. I mean, the whole American idea of what to do in Iraq was the Rumsfeld group wanted to transfer power. They wanted the regime change, but they wanted to immediately transfer it to exile groups immediately. And they had the guy. They trusted him. They knew him. He was been working with them for a decade, the American Defense Department. And he wasn't perfect, but it will be an instant, immediate new government. But then what Colin Powell and everyone wanted was and Brennan wanted, not Brennan, but Bremen, okay, wanted was a kind of protectorate, kind of like an American protectorate over time. So it was, the people who get responsible for, the failure of Iraq policy was the State Department, and it's kind of, let's make them democratic and democratic building, and we bring NGOs and things like, this is nation building crap. That was always State Department. State Department has always been the nation building crap. The DOD was also completely against nation building crap. So, and that you had generals who were against the war simply because they knew that it was eventually the State Department would take over, and that they would be ultimately producing nation building, because they saw that everything would happen. My God, you saw that the same mission creep that happened in Somalia and everywhere else in that same sense. So therefore, you have to understand that. In other words, he understood the English system very well. He didn't understand the American system. Very few political comedians and political actors really understand the dynamic of the bureaucracy and the federal system and the way it works. They get the Congress, president, they get the division of powers and the big picture, but the way the bureaucracy operates in the American model has never been accurate. Now you had little bits of it about, but usually municipal government. You had both in Spin City with Michael J. Fox doing the assistant to the mayor, and that was, he understood. There was, again, mayoral politics, mayors, metropolitan politics. And then Parks and Recreation, again, perfect example of municipal county governance that were good comedy critiques of the problem. So that's my little entertainment chapter today. I didn't want to go too much. I want to finish up today, so this is my thing. We experimented with a new camera. I think I might stick with it. We'll see how it goes. People said we had voice problems and other thing problems, so we'll see what happens. So take care. Bye bonds, and have a good day. See you next week. And ta-ta.